Welcome to week 2 of my Yale Philosophy Challenge. It's been a busy week. I'm excited to take you guys into the Ring of Gyges. It's a really great discussion about moral decision making and why we do the things we do. The argument here is that sometimes we're moral because we want to thoroughly benefit internally from the act of being moral. And then sometimes we act moral just so that we can look moral and we can get all the benefits of being moral, but we actually do things maybe not the right way in the shadows. So my question to you today in this week's video is, as you watch, are you the kind of person that would do things morally because it makes you feel good, or are you the kind of person that just wants to look moral, but instead, when nobody's watching, will do whatever you have to self-serve and get ahead? Now, before you make a choice and think, well, I'm the moral person, let's see what Plato has to say. If you had a magic ring that allowed you to do whatever you wanted, would you enjoy having that ring? So here's the question. What do the Lord of the Rings and Plato have in common? We're going to get into that today, and, hint, it's all about a magic ring. I got this really cool set of the Lord of the Rings. They're small, they're sort of, pocket-sized, and each one is a book from Lord of the Rings. Here's the Return of the King. There's a ring in this story, as you know, that the hobbits get a hold of, and they're doing all they can to keep it out of the hands of the, all of the evil out there, so as it won't be used for evil. And the challenge is, every time they get it, whoever holds this ring is constantly tempted by the dang thing. Well, in Plato's book, The Republic, did you know that there's actually a story in here called the Ring of Gyges, which is pretty much the same idea. Here's how the story goes. The Ring of Gyges is told in this book, The Republic by Plato. It's told by a man named Glaucon, and it's being given to Socrates. We all know who Socrates is, right? The philosopher. Glaucon is arguing that if man had a special ring that would allow him to do whatever he wanted, he would act unjustly, because what we care more about as humans is to look moral, to look like we're good, but at our core, if nobody's watching, we're gonna do what we gotta do to get our own and take care of our family. I don't know, do you agree with that? Let's see what happens. In the Ring of Gyges, there is a man named Gyges, Gyges, and he's a shepherd. Now, Gyges is out tending to his flock, and there is an earthquake that takes place, and it opens up a big crag in the center where he's standing. Poor Gyges falls down into the hole, and as he's laying there, he looks up and sees a big cavernous area, and there's a door back there, and it has like a big, beautiful horse painted on it and whatever else. Well, he gets to his feet, he walks over, and he peeks through the door, and he sees the corpse of a giant laying on the ground. Now, this giant, nothing special about him, other than the fact that he's wearing a ring. Gyges slips it off his finger and takes this with him back up the crag out to normal civilization. Well, as the story goes, Glaucon is again telling this. He says that Gyges is sitting around the fire with all of his shepherd buddies looking at his ring, slips it on his finger, nothing happens. It's not quite like Bilbo and the other hobbits, but as he spins it and the bezel turns to the inside of his hand, he disappears. Right? That's disappearing, apparently, on YouTube. I don't know. But he disappears. And all of his buddies are like, whoa, where did Gyges go? What happened to him? And they start talking about him as if he wasn't really there. Now, Gyges is sitting there going, this is great. They can't see me. And he spins the ring back around and he reappears. Right? And all of a sudden they're like, oh, hey, Gyges, you're back. And they continue hanging out. Well, he sits there and strokes his chin. He says, you know what? I got an idea. He gets himself assigned to the king's staff. And while he's in the castle with all these other people, he uses his ring secretly to get into the chambers of the queen, and he seduces her. Naughty Gyges. Well, as he does this, he convinces the queen to murder the king, and Gyges takes the throne. He gets everything he wants. Nobody knows how he did it, and so the story goes. Well, that's the philosophical question we're being asked in week 2 of Yale's philosophy course that I'm taking. My favorite part of all of the reading this week was this very story. And to ask you this question, if you had a ring of Gyges, would you always do the right thing? Big fan of Plato. But you need to know how to read him, and I think there are some tips and tricks that will be helpful to you if you decide to get into this. So Plato often writes in dialogue form. If you've ever read a play where actors are speaking to each other, this is much how Plato writes. And one of the things that really helped me is I identified who each of the speakers were by putting a little S or an A, I can't see what I got here, next to each of the paragraphs. So if Socrates is speaking, I'll put an S. If Glaucon's speaking, I'll put a G. And I just do that all the way down. That's really important because when Plato writes, the main character is generally Socrates. Socrates was Plato's teacher. And what we know about Socrates is that he would wander around the city and have conversations with other thinkers, usually young men at the time, who would challenge the way they think. And that's how he became known. He didn't write anything down. Plato did all of the writing. But because it's happening, because there's a dialogue, we really want to make sure we're dissecting out Socrates' words versus the other people in the city, because we want to know what is philosophically based versus what's not, right? I'd rather learn from Socrates than Glaucon. Okay, so that's the first thing that really helped me with this. Hey, if you found that video helpful, I want to thank you for following along on my Yale Philosophy Challenge. Again, this is lecture 2 of 26. There are a lot of these to come. Each week I will be reading from the lecture series, then I will be watching the lectures, and if I find anything valuable to share with you, I will do so on the video. Now, if you want to follow along, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you can see these as they come out. If you've always wanted to take a philosophy course but just found you didn't have the time, then perhaps this is a nice way for you to get your toes in the water and learn some interesting philosophical ideas, like the Ring of Gyges, without having to commit 20 hours of reading every week. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you for watching, and never stop learning.